Hi guys, and welcome to our lab on physical and chemical weathering. Here I've created this slideshow, this little handout, to help you understand a little bit better of what this lab is going to look like for you at home. But if you don't mind pulling that up and following along with me, that will help out so much. The first slide basically just tells you what to expect. So, what exactly is chemical and physical weathering? We know that physical weathering is when rocks are broken into smaller rocks caused by environmental factors. Chemical weathering, on the other hand, is when there's changes that involve the rocks being made into a new substance. This lab is basically going to be showing us a simple lab at home that can tell you exactly what happens to rocks chemically versus physically. There's a little video there that you can watch. It'll help you answer some questions we'll have later on, okay? After this lab, the students should be able to observe and identify slow changes to the Earth's surface caused by weathering. They should be able to explore how soils are formed by the weathering of rock and decomposition, and also recognize that forces cause the change, and that's why the Earth's surface is constantly changing. For this lab, you will need sugar cubes, about 5-ish, give or take, doesn't really matter. A small plastic cup, I have this one here. Graham crackers. Vinegar, I just used white, all natural vinegar here. Anything you have in your home that's some type of vinegar will work. A dropper, so here I have one of the little squeezy droppers. You can use a syringe, anything that it can be considered a dropper is great. Now the last one is optional, it's a book. Now you're gonna notice, let me put my little napkin down, that these sugar cubes are very hard and they can be hard to break. So if that's the case, sometimes it helps to push it down with a book. I'm gonna see if I can do it without the book, but we'll see. That's it, that's all you need, easy peasy. So for the first part of this lab, it's gonna be all about physical weathering. So first, take your take your sugar cube, lay it on the table, and you're gonna crush it with your hand or the book. Now, let's see if I can crush it with my hand, maybe not. Gonna grab, just excuse me for a second, a little something hard I have in here. Okay, that works pretty good. Okay, so if you look in front of you, what do you see? Yeah, so we're gonna see that our sugar cube is completely crushed up and just a bunch of little pieces of sugar cube, right? Observe these changes and you're gonna answer these questions to yourself. First question, what type of change is this? Well, we know that this is physical weathering. Why? Why is it physical weathering? Well, that would be because we still have the same substance here. It's still a sugar cube. However, environmental factors, my hand or your book, have come in and caused it to be crushed into a bunch of tiny pieces of sugar cube. At the end of the day, it's still a sugar cube, but it's just broken down into smaller pieces. That's what makes it physical weathering. What are some objects that could cause this type of pressure? Well, anything in the environment that is larger than the rock that's being crushed can be an environmental factor. That can be a larger rock, a natural disaster, weathering, anything like that. What would we need to do to this ice cube to change it to chemical weathering? Well, we know that chemical weathering is when the substance is changed into a completely new substance or mineral. So, why don't we just try it out? Here on the next slide, you'll see a little example of what it should look like. There's your cube before, there's your cube after. Perfect example of physical weathering. Next is the chemical weathering lab. So this one's a little bit trickier. You're gonna have to pay attention closely. First, grab your plastic cup. Set it in front of you. Not too hard. Next, drop the rest of your sugar cubes into the cup. So I'm just gonna grab a couple there. I'm actually gonna fill up the whole bottom of the cup. So that's about 8 cubes. So give or take, you don't have to have that many. That's just so that you can see it a little better here. Set the graham cracker on top of the cup. Okay, next, open up your vinegar. Have a parent help you with this if you need. And fill up your dropper. Okay, so we have our dropper filled, graham cracker on top, sugar cubes, I keep calling them ice cubes, sugar cubes at the bottom. And what we're gonna do, as I'll hold it up here to show you a little better, is drop the vinegar on top of the graham cracker. Now we're gonna let it sit for a minute. This isn't gonna be an instant thing. When I see it's kind of soaked up, I'm gonna drop a little bit more. I see it starting to work. Just gonna keep doing this. It's kind of a slow process, but you'll see it happening. Drop a little more. Hopefully y'all can see the top of it there. Okay. Now if you can look closely at it, you can see that it's starting to, yep, there it goes. Make a hole in the graham cracker. Gonna get a little bit more vinegar and just finish it up. Okay, so I'm gonna set it back down in front of me. You can clearly see that there's a hole in the graham cracker and the vinegar has now leaked down into the ice cubes. And I'm gonna put a little bit more in there. Whoops, that's a little bit too much, but you get the point. Okay, I'm gonna let it sit there while we answer our questions. Okay, first question, what type of weathering is this? Well, if I lift up the graham cracker, set it over with my trash over there, I can see that these ice cubes are literally starting to dissolve in the vinegar, right? The longer they sit here, the more they're dissolving. Half of them are broken in half, and the other half just completely dissolves. That means that this sugar cube has now turned into a completely different substance. It's no longer a sugar cube. The sugar is actually combined with the vinegar and is just gone, disappeared. So that makes it chemical weathering. We had a substance, sugar cube. Let me see if I can grab one of these. And now it's something completely different. You see the difference there? Look, it's just falling apart. So why is this chemical weathering? Well, like we just said, it's a completely different substance. And what is a real life example of this scenario? So this scenario, the reason we put the graham cracker on top is to show you that this is actually a real life scenario of a sinkhole. Now, if you don't know what that is, hang on a minute and we will clear everything up. Get the vinegar off my hands. Okay, here on the next slide, if you'll turn with me, you'll see chemical weathering before and after. So, a few questions I assume a class might have about this. One, I put, what does a graham cracker represent? So, the graham cracker in this scenario represents the soil. It can honestly represent many things, but we're just going to go with soil here. And sometimes rain can fall, we can call it acid rain, and erode at the soil. So our vinegar was our acid rain, the graham cracker was the soil, we saw the hole open up. The result is a sinkhole. So that would be what you can see the sugar cubes are completely dissolving. That would be what our experiment was, a sinkhole. Question 2, is there anything we can do to prevent weathering? That's a question I think students would ask in this 3rd grade level. Weathering is a good thing. We don't actually want to prevent it. Weathering breaks down products where they're usually deposited elsewhere. So whenever we have weathering and our rocks are being broken up or different environmental factors like we talked about are acting on them, it actually will end up bringing it somewhere else. So it's not like we have just a whole bunch of rocks that will be piling up forever. It can actually be more harmful to the environment when humans try to intervene. The last question I would suspect a student would have about this lab is what type of weathering is the Statue of Liberty? As I was doing research about this, I learned that's a question many students are so curious about because everybody knows that the Statue of Liberty is changing. And I would say since the Statue of Liberty is made of calcium, has calcium in it, acid rain actually turns the copper. It gives it that rusty appearance that we all see. And since the material is being changed, it would be considered chemical weathering. A few struggles that I see happening with this lab would be, I honestly think the lab is very straightforward. It's a simple lab. It doesn't need that much explanation. It's perfect for the young grades such as 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I think the biggest struggle would be differentiating between the physical and chemical weathering when asked specific examples. So there obviously would be assignments for this afterwards, and I think it is hard when you're given a specific example to say, is that physical weathering or chemical weathering? But it's such an important topic to discuss, and I think this lab goes perfectly with it. The way I would combat this struggle is by making sure to give plenty of examples and quizzing them after the lesson without grading it. That way we can clear up any questions and confusion before it starts to become a grade for them. So that's the end of my lab. I think the ingredients are very simple things that you can just find around anybody's house. And the reason I keep making this Google Slides is just because I think it's a lot of information to fit on a worksheet, and I think it's a lot more appealing to the eyes to see it digitally and be able to see it broken up into different aspects like Google Slides can do. That's why I keep choosing that, but I hope you enjoyed this easy at-home lab, and thank you.